for the last part of our afternoon session, morning session. It's afternoon now. I would love to introduce Sally Ranney, who is going to be moderating a wonderful panel on the theory and practice of nurture capital, so building American resilience. And Woody Tasch from Slow Money will be involved, and Roger Sorkin from American Resilience.
So I'm here with two really amazing individuals, two gentlemen who are solidly, like almost everybody else in this room, dedicated to their work having tangible, on-the-ground impacts. So Woody Tasch started Slow Money that turned into the Slow Money Institute that has evolved, and he's written 2 books. His latest one is about nurture capital. And the first time I met Woody, and I heard somebody said, well, there's this guy, Woody Tasch, and he does this thing called Slow Money. I said, Slow Money? What is Slow Money? So I talked to him, and he said, well, look what fast money has gotten us. And that's all he had to say. I got it. I got it.
I did actually say a little more than that.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I remembered. And since then, he has come, his organization and his work has had substantial impact in the investment arena. In fact, I think about $57 million have been invested in projects that, as Brooke Levan said, support life. And Roger is part of the American Resilience Project, which the question they always ask themselves is, can a film solve America's problems? And this is a documentary film company, and what they do is they document various issues, but before they go into the filming, if I'm correct, they really want to know what is the impact that they want to have at the end of the day when this film goes out into the public. So they're always looking at policy, they're looking at local communities, whatever the issue might be, they want the answer and they want the impact before they do the film.
Exactly.
And that's a bit of a reverse from a lot of film companies, how they go about it. It's the impact. Oh, this will have an impact once it's done. So I'm going to let Woody go ahead. So we've got movies, we've got art here. This is poetry.
Art.
And a writer. This is a filmmaker. Art. And bringing in that kind of creativity is the bridge here between these two, besides they're really having an impact on the ground. So Woody, go ahead.
Thanks, Sally. So yeah, and just to follow on that last comment, the idea of narrative and culture came up yesterday. So I would see Roger and I were gabbing a little bit before. We didn't know each other, but he's using film to try to change narrative in certain industrial sectors. I'm using poetry and writing to change the narrative with individuals. So just to close the loop on the Slow Money thing, we're actually up $65 million now in 728 small local organic food enterprises around the country. That's in about a dozen communities over 8 years. So if you do that, no, that's, well, thank you, but it's small. The median investment is about $100,000. I mean, if you do the math, you won't be surprised at that. So it's kind of in the no man's land between microfinance and angel investing. There are some angel investments. There are some microloans. We don't tell anyone what to do. It's completely decentralized, grassroots, volunteer-led. And go to slowmoney.org if you want to know more about that. I was listening to Kate McBride, like many of us were before, and she said she was a Luddite. So I figured, okay, someone said the Luddite word. I'm going to just offer a new definition of Luddite that occurred to me while she was speaking. A Luddite is someone who prioritizes diversity over efficiency.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
So it kind of takes it away from being for or against technology or for or against any one mechanical thing. So, okay, I'm glad you like that. All right. So I thought I wasn't going to do this, but I thought in the interest of fun, since it's that part of the day where everything's flagging a little bit and lunch and different things, I'm going to actually read a couple of paragraphs from my book because it'll get me out of being another talking ahead, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. And I did talking about narrative and story and whatever. I was at a book festival last week, and the guy interviewing me said, "Do you think we need a new myth?" So that's even a bigger question than narrative and story and whatever, and I was kind of taken aback. Now, I shouldn't have been surprised that he asked me that, because this book starts with 20 pages of mythic poetry called Poetically Incorrect. And hopefully you can tell from that title that it is meant to be fun as well as serious. And I did realize after I wrote the book that it has a style, and the style is lively serious, as opposed to deadly serious. And so it's very much in keeping with, Brooke and I are friends, you won't be surprised to hear that. So it's very much about the life in the soil, the life of the mind, and a sentence that does not appear in this book that I realized after I wrote it is the following. Let's see if I can remember it. Imagination is to the mind what fertility is to the soil. Now, I don't know if that's actually true or not, but it's kind of a fun thought. That's my definition that's my version of fun anyway, all right. And then to prove that the book is lively serious, I'm going to now recite a very tiny poem that is the opening thing you see when you open the book. And it says, "If it's true that we are what we eat, may it also be true that we are not what we tweet." So the book is very much about culture, and you can see from that, I see the local food movement as being very important because it's reconnecting us to the soil and to the life in the soil and all of those things. And B, because it's reconnecting us to one another in the places where we live, and democracy and community and all these things. So it's way more important than just the food or just the microbes in the soil, although those things are vital. It's about culture and civilization and whatnot. Okay, so that's enough of that. I'm going to read from the beginning of a chapter called Return. And from what I just said, you probably will know, because the book has poetry and whatever, this is not just about financial return, as you were about to hear. So return. Salmon return. Boomerangs return. Hindus return. When things work out, investments return. Letters with insufficient postage return. So do infections, mosquitoes, prodigal sons, wandering eyes, sideways glances, the hands of a clock, circular reasons, not quite infinite seasons, pendulums, memories, criminals to the scenes of their crimes, and stories to where they left off. Prior to the advent of colony collapse disorder, bees returned. Heroes, real and mythic, return. Odysseus, Columbus, General Douglas MacArthur. Too many winks, verdicts, and tennis serves have been returned over the course of human history to be counted. The same goes for sweaters after Christmas. If no one laughed after that one, I was going to get seriously worried. And you were smiling internally, I know. And as long as there have been neighbors, economists, democratic entanglements, and governments, there have been many happy returns, diminishing returns, election returns, and tax returns. Through it all, however, through all these physical, spiritual, emotional, postal, historical, mythical, electoral, recreational, and commercial goings and comings, there is one thing in our infinite industrial wisdom and pioneering spirit that we have not returned: carbon. Mm-hmm. Who was that? We have to go out and have a drink later, Jen. So anyway, I just wanted to give you a feel. So this book is kind of a reflection. I've had the privilege and challenge of traveling around the country a lot for the last 10 years, talking about slow money, which was sparked by my first book, which is also out there. It just started a conversation about food, money, soil, community, kind of a radically, in the root sense of that word, not political sense, a radically different way of thinking about money, about what it would mean to bring money back down to earth, to invest more locally, all the way down, the most local thing, to the soil. And that process of going around the country talking not only sparked capital flows, but made me believe that there are millions of people out there who already believe in some kind of a new narrative. If we want to go back there, it just isn't quite in focus yet. And I do have a line in the book. This is good. It's my chance to say Wendell Berry. It's just important to say that whenever I can. So there's a line in the book that says, "Wendell Berry lovers, what in the world are we going to invest in?" And because of you, how many people here do not know who Wendell Berry is? Fantastic. Almost nobody. I don't know if so. You know, if you don't know, Google him. 50 books, patron saint of everything to do with small agrarian farming. Beautiful poet, philosopher. So you know, there are millions of people who believe that is the truth, if you will. That is the beauty. Don't believe the change is going to come from the top down. That it has to come from the bottom up. It has to come from individuals, and also that small, diversified, decentralized. And that's come up a whole bunch. And obviously, all the microgrids and there, you know, these ideas play out across sectors, right? But that decentralization and diversity have to become the priority going forward for resilience and prudence and all kinds of other things. So anyway, that's just wanted to give you a feel. I think I'll leave it at that. So,
Okay,
Roger,
from the bottom up, from the roots,
from
literally.
the roots. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, Roger, tell us about the American Resilience Project and some of the films that you've done and the impact they've had and where you're going now.
Happy to do it. So thanks for having me. The American Resilience Project is a new nonprofit that makes films with the intention of influencing policy and behavioral change. And so I want to first give a shout out to Maggie Fox, because when she spoke yesterday about narratives, it was music to my ears. So thank you, Maggie. But I have a little caveat to that, which is that if you're really going to use narrative to influence policy and influence behavioral change, you have to sort of hide your wonkiness, but you have to get wonky. And that's what we do. We start with that. So before we make our films, we'll consult with groups like Environmental Defense Fund and Sierra Club and any number of organizations to figure out what are they working on now that has some realistic policy outcome that's practical. We tend to stay away from the idealism so that we can craft something that allows for a very tangible and practical call to action. So that when we create the film, our intention is still to move people and make you laugh and cry like any good story would do. But when the lights come up and the credits roll, you've got people sitting up on a stage to say, okay, now we're going to talk about the bond measure that you're supposed to go out and support because you've been so inspired by the story that we've told that fits in with the larger narrative that we are shepherding along here. So the past films that we've done are, some of you might have seen, they've shown here, The Burden, which looks at how the US military is transitioning to clean energy in the name of national security and operational readiness. Not because they have any vested interest in protecting the planet, but they have an interest in protecting themselves. And they know that clean energy is the way to do it. The next film that showed here last year is called Tidewater, and that looks at how sea level rise is affecting the bases, specifically in Hampton Roads, which is the largest concentration of our bases in the country, including our largest naval base near Norfolk, Virginia, some of you might know. And the current project that we're working on is, we realize one-off film will not do justice to it. It is the story of the transformation of the electric grid. It is not a story that can be told at one given point in time and needs to be told over time. And we realize that with the current collective attention span, for lack of a better characterization, we can't reach people with just long-form documentary films. And I should say, long-form for us is 40 minutes. We don't even go past that, but we're starting to see that even that's too much. And with all due respect to the great film festivals, including Impact Film here, and all the festivals that we try to go to, and we get into the festivals, we're proud to win at festivals, we would still rather have a screening at the House Armed Services Committee with 12 staffers and 3 congressmen. And then we bring in the surrogates, the experts, the retired admirals, whoever it might be, to then tell the folks in the room, this is the way you can create political cover for yourself. Here's the narrative you need to embrace. Here's the story you need to tell, so that when it comes time for you to go out there and take a stand on a bill, you can do it and still get reelected and not get primaried, which is, we think it's the fear of getting primaried that keeps a lot of people from doing the right thing. It's another conversation for another time. But this new project is called Current Revolution. And what we're trying to do here is unite the interests of the utilities, auto, tech, and defense sectors around a common narrative that they can all understand elevates their own business models. So we start with that wonky side, but we know that we need the stories of regular people and people like them. I mean, everyone responds best when in the audience you see someone on screen that somehow reflects your own values. So when our audience is utilities executives, we have utilities executives in the film that can say, we weren't afraid to embrace solar because we saw that it made us money. But we also have people, when we're trying to inspire behavioral change, that can say, yep, I took a stand in my community and I got involved because net metering is something that I care about, and I'm a libertarian, and who's the government to tell me what I can put on my rooftop or not? So we try to aim for a center-right audience because we see that that's where the obstacles are, to be frank. Trying to bring conservatives into the conversation and show that there's something in it for everybody. So we have the brand new 4-minute teaser for this series queued up. And again, it's called Current Revolution. And I'll just say one other thing about it. This is going to basically encapsulate many of the different chapters that we hope to do in subsequent shorter installments. The first film will be released this summer if we can finish raising the money to do it. And then after that, we're going to have many other chapters to flow, including one dedicated solely to Puerto Rico. And so there's been some conversation about Puerto Rico here today, and I would invite anyone who has an interest in how we rebuild the grid or lack thereof in Puerto Rico, come talk to me so that we can start documenting that effort. And so here is Current Revolution.
For those people in the fossil fuel industry, it is a simple truth that your business is going to go away.
It's just a matter of figuring out how to do that without leaving people behind or destabilizing the system.
The original grid was designed to allow power to flow in one direction, from the generator to the user. And now we've got the need for power to flow in both directions.
The future of the grid will be more houses that are providing their own energy, that also have electric vehicles plugged into the garage.
Well, that takes the utility completely out of the loop. So either you transform and adapt or get out of the way.
In 6 states across the country, power companies are fighting to change the rules.
We understand that their bottom line is investment. They've got to turn a profit.
The utility does not want to advance solar, other than if they own it. They see rooftop solar as a out-and-out competitor.
These electric monopolies need to understand there's an energy revolution going on.
Shouldn't I have the freedom to put solar panels up on my roof if I want? Should there really be a utility telling me, no, you can't do that? If they keep trying to push that, more and more people are just gonna disconnect from the grid.
I want the power company at the table when it comes to developing solar and EVs because they have the money, they have the infrastructure.
Electric vehicles are one of the only areas of load growth right now for utilities across this country.
If a utility partners with automotive, then all of a sudden you have mobile energy storage, and if you have vehicle-to-grid communications, now the utility has a new market.
You have to adapt your business model. You need to be supporting the electric car industry, because the bottom line is they're burning your electrons that you make a profit off of.
To an average consumer, they want the light to come on when they flip the switch, and they want to be able to pay the bill.
We've got people who actually have a higher utility bill than they do a mortgage on their house.
You don't really have the appreciation of electricity until you don't have it.
The electric grid was originally designed to last 50 years, and in many cases, it's over 100 years old.
If we lost power for 2 weeks in the summer, it would be a humanitarian crisis of major proportions.
Many of our bases are at the end of the power line. If anything happens upstream, we're solely running on diesel generators.
We don't want to lose these military bases. One of the questions they're going to be asking is, does the base have its own power?
There's virtually no one that is opposed to solar. Now, that differs from our elected officials going against their constituents.
Just because they're conservative doesn't mean they can't embrace electric cars, or like not having to be beholden to whatever the utility decides they want to charge them.
Solar is not something that only tree huggers like. What is more conservative than generating your own electricity and not be dependent on someone else to do it for you?
It's such superior technology, we're going to turn the corner so fast it'll make people's heads spin.
Put it on a moral foundation. Everyone has a right to clean water, to toxic-free air, This is the civil rights issue of our time.
To take care and protect my creation. We will stand as one united force.
I believe that God created this world and put that sun out there, in my opinion, for us to take advantage of.
Now, when the companies can begin to say, how do we make a profit as well as protect the environment, then I think we're on the right path. So therefore, we have an obligation to fight. We will not bend, we will not break, and we will not bow down.
Hey.
And I just have 15 seconds worth more of talking to do, which is to say thank you. Julie Wrigley and her team from ASU are here. You saw a lot of folks from ASU that are in that because they have a lot of expertise and they're focused on this work. So it drew me immediately to ASU, so I went down and filmed there. And you saw Dr. Gerald Durley. Many of you have been inspired by him all throughout this conference. I met him here, thanks to Chip and Sally, years ago. Tim Eccles, I met here too. So AREDAY has a big part in the seed for this.
Well, thank you, thank you. And I've got several questions for you, but I want to go to Woody right now, and I want to ask you how you determine where nurture capital, slow money is going to be invested. How do you decide that?
Well, before I answer, I just realized I didn't explain the term nurture capital. So just because time is so short, I'll just say venture capital, philanthropy. There's something in the middle that doesn't exist yet, nurture capital. So that would be direct, affection-driven, I'm using Wendell Berry's language here, local, relationship-based investing that is return agnostic in terms of the arithmetic, but not in terms of all those other returns. Meaning we have to put some money to work locally because we all have the money. Individuals have the money. We have to take it from where it is and put it to work locally. So that would be nurture capital. As you can tell from maybe that, nobody's in charge. So there are no fiduciaries involved. Well, there are some small funds that are part of the slow money nurture capital thing. So we're not against that. But by and large, like the $65 million we're talking about is all just people making their own decisions locally, which farmer they want to support, which restaurant, which compost company, which cheesemaker, anything that has to do with starting with the soil all the way up through local food in the local food system. So no one's in charge. You're in charge.
So your institute actually is inspiring people, educating people, providing a vehicle to see what's out there.
We're trying to tell the story. We're collecting data. We do a lot of. We basically are organizers. It's just people don't usually think about organizers working with investors. That's kind of but we're organizing groups of local investors to do it for themselves.
So has anyone in your network or you invested in Kernza and the Land Institute? And
not directly, actually.
What Wes has been doing? Yeah.
But I mean, indirectly, one of our slow money members in Boulder, actually lives in Denver, but he participates in Boulder, has a 350-acre farm about 50 miles east of Boulder, and he has, I think this is the only place, it's one of the only places other than the Land Institute where Kernza has been planted.
Right.
I think it's the only one, I'm sure it's the only one in Colorado. They planted a few acres of Kernza as an experiment.
So quickly, Kernza is a native grass that Wes Jackson of the Land Institute in Kansas has been working on for quite a while. And it actually has more protein than quinoa, and it has a root structure that is 20 feet deep. And so someone in the last panel was talking about, I can't remember who it was, about regenerative agriculture and how you really keep water intact, how you keep no-till. This is a no-till as well. I've actually had cookies from the flower of Kernza, and it's fabulous.
Hey,
but it's not commercial
Quick fact
yet.
to just add also a thread that came up before on the water thing. I almost wanted to shout it out. So here, I'll do it as a quiz. For every 1% more organic matter in an acre of soil, how much more water does it hold? So for each 1% more organic matter, anybody want to take a wild guess? I know it's kind of out of the blue, the units. Since no one's guessing, I was like 21,000 gallons. So that was the answer to the woman who asked about arid lands. If you increase carbon in the soil, you increase the water holding capacity. There's a whole much more to say on that. But.
Yeah. So how do you decide when you're looking at all these organizations and what kind of policy they want to drive? How do you decide to invest, which is a lot of money, in a film, particularly this one that's got 5 or 6 different chapters to it? How do you decide which one of those you're going to really go forward with?
A lot of it has to do with the legislative cycle, the policy calendar. So, for example, you saw a couple of Georgia Public Service Commissioners in this particular film. There's an election in Georgia. The Public Service Commission is having an election. There are 2 seats that are in play right now. If one of those seats can be won by the right person, then there are 3 people out of the 5 on that panel that can then start moving utility policy in the right direction in Georgia. They are going in the right direction in many ways. But there's definitely some momentum that needs to speed up. So, we'll talk with the folks in have the title legislative director for any given organization. So they've told me, keep your eye on Georgia, keep your eye on Arizona. Arizona also has an elected commission. I think it's only about a quarter of the states have elected commissions. It's a little harder to make change in the others where they're appointed. And so in this case, I mean, it almost sounds like a fool's errand, and I've had people laugh out loud, and I've laughed out loud even when I say it. We're trying to get people excited about Public Service Commission elections. And if our civic engagement is still so low, even when it's a presidential, gubernatorial, or a national election of some kind, the idea that you're going to get someone to really care about a PSC election, which is a down-ballot race, people don't know the issues, they generally don't know the candidates, that's a very uphill battle for us. But we know that we can, if we can then get the people at the top of the ticket to make the issue utilities reform and regulatory reform, then that'll bring people along to vote for the right utility regulators.
I would think that one of the challenges for both of you is your communications, your communications distribution. How do you get the word out? Do your documentaries go into primary theaters or art theaters, film festivals? How do you get out to more than just the 7 generals sitting around the table? And the same for you. What are your communication delivery systems?
Book.
Yeah. I mean, with us, it's complicated because we think of ourselves as creating arrows, and we have a lot of really good archers that know how to hit the target. So we've licensed our films to Citizens Climate Lobby. They have a Southeast Veterans Campaign that they've been using the Burden and Tidewater to get people to care about clean energy. So they know how to convene the right folks. They'll go to a local chamber of commerce, or they'll go to a VFW hall. And I love the festivals, but they're kind of an afterthought for me. I mean, I want to go where the rubber meets the road, meet the audiences where they are that need to be met. And then, I'm happy to win an award at a film festival any day. So.
Well, I would ask everyone in the audience here, everybody that has come and is coming to AREDAY, if you have networks, you should put out on your newsletters, through your internet lists, e-blasts, whatever it is, you should let your networks know about what's going on with both of these organizations. We've only got 12 seconds left, and I want to add something about Woody, is that he has been selected by the World Dignity Forum, which is happening, and Manu, who founded it, is sitting here, to be a partner with them, because Nurture Capital really is about dignity, both for those that invest and for what they are investing in, which is the land and life. So I just wanted to add that because that's a big piece of what we've been talking about here. That's part of the paradigm flip in our relationship to life. So please thank these 2 gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.